to Representative Adam Schiff. He's a ranking member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
So, you know, yelling and all of this makes for, I suppose, you know, television. But how do you as a party turn this into action? What is this all about? How are you going to take these people, motivate them in a way that they weren't motivated, frankly, in the presidential race?
Well, Poppy, I have to say I was chuckling as I was seeing that clip of Sean Spicer on Fox suggesting that these are all paid AstroTurf activists. Does he really think that the millions of people that have turned out to protest, to go to town halls and coffees?
Well, just to be clear, Congressman, just to be clear, and I probably should have said on the air, that was from February 6th, and that is when he was asked about protesters in general, including protesters, you know, protesting after the president's inauguration, et cetera. So just to be clear, this wasn't him this week addressing those town halls, just to be clear.
Yeah, well, at the same time, GOP members and GOP commentators are suggesting that still that these are paid activists, paid protesters. And if he really thinks that any organization has the capacity to turn out these millions of people, I'd like to meet the leaders of that organization. It would be very impressive. But the reality is this is entirely organic. It is not being organized by the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or any wealthy philanthropist. These are people who are, I think, desperately concerned about the direction of the country. I share that concern, and who are turning out and activated in a way I've never seen before, and I think eclipsed anything I've seen before. And look, because it's organic, it's a challenge, I think, for members of both parties. I've had a number of town halls and coffees since the election, and they're challenging because people are very upset, and they are desperately concerned about which way the country is going. But I think the best thing representatives can do is hear people out, and what we hope to accomplish is to have that energy turn productively into changing governance in the country. And the challenge will be, can it be maintained for the next almost 2 years?
Right. I mean, you want it to help you in 2018 in the midterms, and you're right. The challenge is how do you maintain it and get it to go from words to action. I want to get your take on the new executive order we're expecting from the White House this week, basically a new travel ban. You said to Politico earlier this week that the original travel ban, quote, is already affecting our intelligence partnerships in other parts of the world. How specifically has it done that? What intelligence do you have to point to that?
Well, you know, I was in Munich at the National Security Conference and talking with leaders from other parts of the world, the president of Afghanistan, the president of Iraq, and clearly this has been kind of a body blow to our cooperation. They're still working with us, but it just got a lot more difficult. And you can imagine if we're trying to recruit sources, we're trying to gather intelligence, and people that we're working with or hope to work with, their last, chance, if they are discovered, is the hope that they can emigrate, that they can find protection in the United States. If we can't offer that anymore, if that's something in question, or more broadly, people don't want to work with us because they think our country is hostile to Islam or hostile to people from their country, it just makes the job that much more difficult.
All right, so the White House has said repeatedly this is not a Muslim ban. Obviously, you and others have a different take on that. But you were just in Iraq 3 weeks ago, Congressman, and you say, look, when you're on the ground in Iraq, what you see is that the United States is competing for influence in Iraq with Iran, namely. And Adam Kinzinger, your fellow congressman, a Republican, made this assessment about what he hopes is not included in the new travel ban from the White House just yesterday with Wolf Blitzer.
I actually wish that Iraq was not included on the travel ban. I think it will be, because Iraq is our closest ally right now in fighting ISIS, and frankly, their vetting standards are very tight because, you know, we created them as a country. So I wish that wasn't the case.
He says Iraq shouldn't be included. I assume you agree with him, and just what your assessment is from the ground there as to why.
Well, I do agree, but frankly, beyond that, I don't think we ought to be singling out these countries. In particular, Iraq, Adam is right, because we are competing for influence with Iran. We need to be able to work with Iraqis. We're, you know, shoulder with them right now in the fight in Mosul to try to take back that city from ISIS. But even more broadly than that, even if you carve Iraq out, as long as this is perceived, as the president has said is his intention, that this is really designed to ban Muslims from coming to the country, it's going to hurt us in Iraq, whether they're included or not. It's going to hurt us in the entire Muslim world. King Abdullah of Jordan was recently in Washington. You can imagine how much more difficult it is, and he's already walking a balancing wire given the challenges within Jordan with his neighbors. But how does he explain to his people cooperation with a country that would ban essentially people coming with the faith that most of his countrymen practice? There's just no way to sugarcoat that. And this new ban is going to look a lot like the old ban, and it's going to be tainted by the same, I think, intention all along, which is to give effect to his campaign promise of banning Muslims.
Really quickly, Congressman, it might and it might not. I just have to point you back to comments that were made by FBI Director James Comey, who said, I can't make absolute assurances that there's no risk associated with refugees coming into this country, et cetera. And also the former head of the DNI saying that there are, he said there is a concern about ISIS trying to infiltrate operatives among these refugees, both in 2015. Is there any additional vetting or ban that you could live with, that you think we should see as a country?
You know, there's always room for improvement in terms of how we vet people coming into the country. But if we're going to be honest about this, the greater threat the country faces isn't coming from these countries, it's coming from Europe. It's people that have gone from Europe to Iraq and Syria to fight, have come back to Europe, and now can travel to the U.S. with no visa at all. Now, we don't want to look at that because we're dependent for tourism and travel, the whole travel industry, on people coming from Europe. But if we're serious about looking at where the vulnerabilities are, that's where they come from. But that's not what this is about. This is not about security, because it's alienating our allies. It's focusing on countries that have not been the source of the problem. This is about politics. This is about catering to that base that supported Donald Trump, living up to his promise of a Muslim ban. If he was really doing this for national security reasons, he would be looking where the vulnerability is, and that is European foreign fighters.
Congressman, we have to leave it there.